Hey, this is Daryl from Snapcase, and you're listening to the Rumors Are True podcast.
Welcome, this is Jeremy Allen Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true.
I'm missing your bed, I never sleep, avoiding the spots where we'd have to speak, and this bottle of beast is taking me home. I'm cuddling close to blankets and sheets, but you're not alone, you're not discreet. Make sure I know who's taking you home. I'm reading your note over again, and there's not a word that I comprehend, except when you signed it, I will love you always and forever.
Hey, thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Dan Bonebrake. You know Dan from the bands Dashboard Confessional, Fay Ray, Seville, Vacant Andys, and War Generation, as well as so many other bands over his crazy, illustrious career. So honored to have Dan on this podcast. We've known each other for a while, so it was cool to catch up and just talk about his past, his present, and his upcoming future. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Dan Bonebrake.
Don't sell me
Dan, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, man, what's happening? It's been a minute since we've seen each other, I mean,
Yeah.
that's not stills on a social,
Yeah,
I want to
dude.
say, what did we run into each other at Wrecking Ball?
Yes, we did.
Was that last time
Yes.
we maybe ran into each other?
Yes, that's probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's way
And then
too
the time
long,
before
dude.
that was St. Augustine when you played with Augustana.
Yeah, but yes, that's an odd one, but yeah, we used to run into each other so often that when we ran into each other at Wrecking Ball, it was like, oh, what? Like, okay, like, dude, why? We were so used to it happening, and now it doesn't happen, and so to see you today was like, it's like, oh, yeah, man, remember when this used to happen on the regular?
I know, right? I know. It's cool though. I mean, it's awesome though that like you have those memories, and it's cool to like connect with people that over the years musically and been at shows and stuff. It's just cool that you have that connection with me as well. And yeah, dude, it's been so cool to just randomly run into you and be like, what the heck? This is so cool. This is awesome. So yeah, man, this is cool.
I love that.
To have you on.
It's one of my favorite things about like playing and touring and stuff like that is just those connections that you make, whether it's about the music or it's about the business or work or even family, or for me, even touring, it was like visiting my cousins, who were on the other side of the country and stuff. But yeah, man, you and I, man, we used to run each other like every 3 months or so for a solid decade plus. And then it's like, now it's been, like you said, probably 8 years since we saw each other, and like, whoa, what the, like,
dude, time flies, man.
Yeah, it sucks it sucks that those things end up happening. Obviously, life happens, and stuff, and you're not in the same places anymore, or on the regular. But man, yeah, it's as soon as your face popped up here, I was like, oh, I mean, I have it in my head, but it's so nice to actually visually see it,
Yeah, I'm a little bit bigger than I was, but
yeah, so am I. But
that's awesome. Dan, tell me what's going on in your world currently, man. Bring me through what's new in your world.
Dude, still playing. Playing in way too many bands, as I always do. But main things I'm playing in is the Lightworkers. I'm doing right now, which is a really cool trio. Every once in a while, Chris plays with us. And then I've been doing the Enablers since like 2003. Although I wasn't on I wasn't in the band the whole time. But it's nice to come back and play with those guys. Down here, every once in a while I get together with this band called the Metropolitan. We just put a single out. And then I'm playing in this band called The Stiff, which is a really fun kind of power pop meets punk band of a bunch of really fun guys. And so we've been writing some songs. That's cool to have down here because it keeps my chops up, because the Lightworkers and the Enablers our drummer is in Gainesville, so we don't get to rehearse as much. So it's nice to have a band down here to kind of keep chops up and have fun playing it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Where are you living again?
I live in Boca. I live in Boca Raton. My wife and I have a house in East Boca, and she's a long distance marathon champion swimmer, so we have to be near the ocean for her to swim open water stuff and things like that. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Well, next time you're in Gainesville, I'll have to come up. Are you guys playing Fest?
Yep. We are. I'm playing Fest with the Enablers and Lightworkers.
Oh, so, nice. Cool. Yeah, it's a good lineup this year.
The lineup's pretty cool. It's when it first comes out, I'm always like, eh. And then, of course, some bands drop out or they add other bands, a couple months later when they hit the announcement, and then they threw that out there, and I'm like, dude, the Get Up Kids are headlining too. Yeah. I'm like, come on, the lineup's really rad, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Pet Cemetery.
Yes.
Oh, dude, I'm in love with that record. I'm even they're opening for Dash in Vegas. I don't know whether it's in a few weeks or next month. I'm even contemplating going out and seeing that there, but I'm in love with that record. Chris sent it to me. I'm like, my wife is tired of hearing that record.
That's hysterical.
Because I play it everywhere. But yeah, man, we're coming up to Fest. I'm totally stoked. I love playing Fest, and I love Gainesville, period.
Yeah.
So I love being up there, and it's magical, man. That Fest is magical because everybody's just there together, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk to you. I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier. I ran into you in St. Augustine when you were playing with Augustana, which was hilarious to me because the story is so funny to me. Your parents, I think, were sitting right in front of me or something like that.
Oh yeah, they were sitting right around.
And it was with Dashboard. It was Augustana, Dashboard, and Third Eye Blind. I know, and I remember you sitting down, and I was like, "Oh, cool. Are you playing tonight?" And you're like, "Yeah, but not with Dashboard." And I'm like, "What?" It was ironic that you were playing for the opening band of Dashboard. I just thought it was so crazy and funny at the same time. But yeah, dude, wild. Like, this so awesome to see you in that different capacity, but also just, still doing your thing. How did that Augustana come up?
Well, it was actually an unfortunate situation for Augustana because their bass player Jake got struck by lightning.
That's right.
2 nights before. So when they played the House of Blues at Orlando, and I don't know whether it was loading in or loading out, he got struck by lightning, and he's fine. And if you go see Augustana right now, he's still in the band touring. So the next day they were playing Miami, and I was going to see the gang, and stuff. And Chris called me beforehand, like early in the afternoon, and Chris and I have known each other since '92. So, and we're like brothers. So, we play pranks on each other, or we take the piss out of each other and stuff. So, I was a general manager of a restaurant up here in Deerfield, and he was like, "Hey, would you want to jump on this tour and finish up Augustana's run playing bass for them?" And I was like, I totally laughed it off. He's like, "No, he's like, I was like, dude, don't tease me with that, because that's my favorite thing in the world to do is go out on tour and play live."
Yeah.
He's like, "No, their bass player got struck by lightning. Would you want to do that?" And I was like, "What?" And I'm like, he's like, "Hey, talk it over with Vanessa, and see what's going on, and let me know." And he's like, "Come down early so you can meet the tour managers." And So Thomas O'Keefe was the tour manager for Third Eye Blind and for the whole package. He's the tour manager for Weezer now, but cool. So so I talked over Vanessa, and I was really working a lot as a GM, and Vanessa and I were newly married that year. So, but we weren't seeing each other very often because I was working way too many hours. And so I got down there and talked to Chris about it. It came to be something like, for part of the tour, Dashboard was paying for the opener, or was responsible for the opener. And then the other half of the tour, Third Eye Blind, was responsible for the opener. Okay. And so the restaurant I worked at was my second family, and stuff also. So I was gonna disappoint one family member or another, So, sure. So I did choose to go play. So I got there. Jack, Dashboard's tour manager, met me, and and he's like, "So, are you coming with us?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm coming." Because my wife was like, "Listen, you're not happy, you're working too many hours, you're not happy. This is what you love to do." And I was like, "Okay," and that's when you do things like that, it's, as you probably know, it's financial responsibility is like so high up on our list these days. When we were kids, it wasn't, but it's like absolutely. Now it is. So she was okay with that, and so I got there, and Jack's like, "Are you coming with me?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, I got to take you back. You're gonna meet." And I walked in, and Thomas said the same thing. He was like, "So are you coming with us?" And gave me a pass right then and there. And then so we went and saw the show, and then I called my work and told them that I was quitting without 2 weeks notice, which I never do. That's not my MO. It was very upsetting to do that to them in that manner, but I didn't have a time frame to change that. Sure. We've since reconciled. So, so I watched the show. We had a great time. I left a little bit early. I left the after show early to come back home. I packed a backpack. Scott Scott had another bass, had a backup bass, so I didn't have to bring mine because I was going to have to fly off of tour back home. And he's like, I already got one there. You can use my rig and everything. So that made it really easy. So grabbed a backpack, went to the corner of 95 and Palmetto, and the bus came by and picked me up behind a Taco Bell. And I jumped on the bus and headed to St. Augustine late at night. Scott and I stayed up, probably having too many whiskeys. And yeah, so I got up the next morning, had breakfast at the amphitheater because they had great production and catering.
Yes.
And then I learned all the Augustana set that morning, and I did sound check with them. And then I played. I believe I only had to. I think I was gone. It was only 6 days or 7 days, maybe. And I think I played 4 or 5 shows with them. Luckily, John Ralston, I'd been on tour with John Ralston when we were opening for Augustana, who was opening for Dashboard. Oh, so I was familiar with Augustana's. I was familiar with their older songs, which was about 2/3 of their set. So I already had that down. I needed to learn like maybe 3 songs or a couple that I had only heard from buying it, you know? Yeah. But yeah, man, that show, I almost played it flawlessly. I didn't do one change, or they changed a part, but different than the recording that they gave me. So there was a chord progression that was backwards, and I missed that, and I'm still bummed about that. But yeah, it went really well. It was great. I liked being with them, but Augustana was obviously, they were, I didn't know 2 of the guys in it. I only knew Dan because the band had changed completely. So from when I had toured with them, but they were having a hard time because obviously Jake was, in the hospital recovering, and stuff like that. Sure. Thankfully, we knew he was going to be okay, but anytime that stuff like that happens out on tour, they were going to be depressed. And I didn't travel with Augustana. I traveled with Dashboard just because they had an extra bunk, and it wouldn't have interrupted. I guess I think Augustana was traveling van and trailer, and they were doing hotels and stuff. So I wasn't going to add any more hardship to them. Yeah.
No, I get that.
And it wasn't going to be like, hey, new guys in the middle, I don't think they were drinking at that time. I don't even know. I don't think Dan drinks anymore, but I do. So I was like, so it was good. And it was really fun. And I really loved it and enjoyed it. And just a few, 3 years ago now, maybe, I was at Chris's kids had a B'nai Mitzvah. So both of them had their mitzvahs, and we were at the party in Nashville, and my wife and I were sat right across from Dan and his wife. But it was really dark in there, and they had Dan and his wife had one of their daughters, I think, maybe a couple of their kids, but I know they had one daughter there. And we were sitting at a really big table, but it was really dark, and it was hard to see across the way, and it was just like this one light up moment when he looks, kind of just like, oh shit, that's my bass player. Damn, what's going on? So it was unfortunately, it was a little bit later on in the night, and they had to go pick up another kid, and stuff like that. But it was a good. I love Augustana's music, and just to get a call like that, I mean, I didn't set myself up. I sent you that list of bands, and it's way too many to mention, and stuff. But I've kind of set myself up. That's always what I'm like, dude. If you call, give me an hour, I'll learn your set, and I'll meet you at the show.
I love that. Though. That's cool. That's amazing.
But it was great. My parents got to see me in that amphitheater, and I got to see all the Dashboard fans, so I felt supported no matter what, especially the crew, because it was Dashboard crew there too. So, but yeah, my mom and dad getting to see me do that too, and that was rad. And they live in Lake City, so they were only an hour and a half away or 2 hours away. So yeah, man, that whole thing was a blast.
That's very, very cool, dude.
Really cool.
Sweet. Well, you kind of mentioned your parents talk me through growing up for you. Maybe some bands, some records, influences, maybe music in the home. Obviously, I would assume. Just bring me through
Yeah.
beginning stages.
So, I mean, the first time I remember really listening to music is probably my mom driving my brother and I, Daryl, who's a year younger than I and is a drummer, and probably driving us to school and stuff, listening to cassettes and stuff. But both of my parents aren't musicians. My dad played trumpet for a minute. My mom sang in the choir when she was a kid. But we just listened to music. My dad will tell you I can't play anything except for the radio. But when we used to vacation in Michigan all summer long for like a month and a half. And we were in a cabin, no TV, no radio. So we just had a record player. So we played records. And my brother and I just loved to DJ those records. And it was mainly 50s and 60s, a little bit of 70s. And every once in a while we'd bring in a record that was, from the 80s at that time. But they were, this is pretty timely because I don't know when this podcast will be released, but yesterday my hero, Brian Wilson, passed away. So, but the Beach Boys All Summer Long record and Surfin' Safari.
Yeah.
Listening to those records and then reading the back of it, because Brian was the oldest. I'm the oldest of sibling on my side out of four of us. Made me want to play. I was already playing trumpet, but made me want to play bass, and then made me want to write songs. I loved singing and playing those songs. I had a very sad day yesterday. Actually, I'm still sad about it. And I was worried that this would come up and I'd cry on your podcast, and I don't want to do that. But yeah, so that was the music that was playing. And then when we got home, we were, cassettes. There were cassettes and things like that. Whether we were listening to the Eagles or Elvis Presley, or like the first record I ever bought was Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
And my brother and I have different tastes in music. We like a lot of the same thing, but we have different tastes. Like I bought my first record was Buddy Holly, and I'm totally will embarrass him because I love this, that his first record was The Village People. But like my first cassette was like Mickey Gilley, because Urban Cowboy was popular at that time. And I think his was Olivia Newton-John. But we used to just listen to a lot of music in my mom's van, and then listen to the radio. And but my brother and I were almost like we're like twins when we were growing up. So he was a drummer, and then I decided I wanted to play bass when we became teenagers, and it was like that just seemed to fit as a rhythm section when you're brothers and stuff,
Sure.
And I mean, you can look at the history of brothers in rock bands. They don't always get along. My brother and I don't always get along either. But for many, many years, music wise, we really got along and had a lot of fun doing it. So,
Why specifically the bass? I mean, did you try guitar as well, or was that just?
Well, so when I first chose trumpet when I was 10 years old, I was in, I think, 5th or 6th grade. And I first chose trumpet, but I was going to a private school, and they had a band class. And what I wanted to play was guitar. But I was the last one. They went around the room asking everybody. It was like 20 so people, kids in there, and the band director is like, what do you want to play? What do you want to play? What do you want to play? And no one picked like cool, like rock band instruments. They're all picking these like, concert band or marching band type instruments. And so I got scared because I wanted to say guitar because that's what I wanted to play. And so I said trumpet because my dad had played trumpet for a minute. And I'm glad I played trumpet because it had most of the leads,
Sure.
But
Sure.
But a few years later, like staring at the back of those Beach Boy records, and my brother was a drummer, I was just like, well, if I'm going to do a band, I'm like, one, Brian Wilson plays bass. My brother's a drummer. That seems like a good rhythm section. And two, bass has 2 less strings than guitar. It's got to be easier, right? You know how the young mind just works it out, and stuff.
Yes.
So that's why it ended up being bass. I mean, I taught myself how to play guitar later on, but but nothing gets me more satisfaction than playing bass in bands, and stuff like, I mean, I don't mind playing solo here and there, and playing guitar in a band here and there, but I have my most fun when I'm playing bass in a band. It's just no doubt about it.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
What I know you mentioned some of those older records. Was there any like hardcore or punk rock or indie rock type records that kind of pushed you in that direction as well?
Hey, buddy. Sorry about that. Hey, okay. Go ahead. Get out. Come on. Come here.
Said, bye-bye.
Wow. So when I was a kid, I grew up in Boca, so there wasn't a lot of rebellion going on here. But I think some of the first punk records that we heard were Never Mind the Bollocks. Of course, you got the Clash. The Clash was even on the radio still, and stuff here and there. So we got into punk rock just because I still liked it, like I liked the melody of those bands, right? Because, sure. That early punk stuff is still melodic. And later on, in middle school and in high school, started hearing about bands like Husker Du, The Replacements, and then especially The Descendants. And then one day somebody, a friend of ours who was a drummer, wanted to play us a song, and he played us Descendants Enjoy, because he liked that record because of the humor, the fart songs and stuff like that. But what happened is he was playing it in his car on a cassette, and the next song that played, and the next song on that record is the Beach Boys' Wendy, covered by Descendants. So I heard those first chords, and Wendy is on all summer long, that record that is like my Beach Boy ultimate record. And he stopped it, and he was going to change it, and put on something. I was like, no, you got to go back. I was like, that was Wendy by the Beach Boys. And it just kind of clicked to me that like independent bands, like bands that were obtainable, when you found out like punk rock bands were touring and playing, VFW halls and things like that, rather than the stadiums that I'd only seen rock bands in, and it was remarkable. I was like, oh, they're playing music that we like also, but we can do it in this manner. And so those were, and like to me, like the Husker Du records I got into was not the first stuff that they put out, which was very hardcore and very, screamy, angsty. But I loved, getting in on, even Metal Circus and stuff like that has there's such great melody and, in those. And the Replacements, again, I get down on the Replacements like 3 or 4 records in, to where they were singing these wonderful melodies, and it was rock and roll, and it was loose, and it was great. So that's what I gravitated toward, but that was up against, Poison and Motley Crue and, a lot of the hair metal that was out there in arena rock, which I love the melodies from a lot of those things too. But, if you cut to a few years later when my brother and I are like in high school, like he discovered a lot of music for me. He worked at Peaches, and there was a lot of music that was discovered, like Jane's Addiction being one of them and stuff like that. But he was a little bit more into the metal, Skid Row. Like he would buy Skid Row's first record, and I'd go buy Paul McCartney's Greatest Hits. Yeah. Sure. But those two things kind of balanced us out for, like we were still playing for each other, and stuff. But yeah, back when we first listened to records though, it was a lot of Beach Boys. It was Jackie Wilson. It was Gene Pitney, and all these singers and these great songwriters, they were playing these great songs from these songwriters and the songwriter guilds and stuff that were just still to this day I listen to on a regular basis. I mean, like you never know what's going to come out of my radio when you're hearing it, but
that's cool though. That's awesome. Yeah. Sounds eclectic.
Yeah,
What's your favorite?
it's very
What's your
clever.
favorite Beach Boys song?
My favorite Beach Boys song, I would say, it's probably "I Get Around" because that's the first song on All Summer Long.
Great song.
I love the. It's a different pattern. I just like all the singing voices, all the different parts. I like the clapping and stuff for the drum parts, and stuff when they're trying to wind it up.
Yeah.
I think that one hits. That's probably my favorite. I mean, I love so many of them, even some, even like Sail on Sailor and stuff. And I was just driving earlier before I got back home for this, and I was listening to the Pet Sounds, just the isolated vocals for all the record. And I was listening to isolated music for all of it. And I'm like, and I'm like listening to that. And I wanted to hear Brian's voice in the direction when they do the studio cuts. And he's like, let's try it like this, all right, take 17, and just like, and he's so young. I mean, he created his masterpiece when he was 23, I'm like, dude, I've never even come close. I'm 53 and I've never come close to writing a song like that. It's totally. Pure genius. But yeah, if I got that, and the song maybe my brother and I probably played the most off of that record is the last song on that record. It's called Don't Back Down. And we thought that was a tough guy kind of sounding song, and I know that I know the Queers named one of their records Don't Back Down, and they covered it, and they did a really cool version of it.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
And it's just a short, like surfer tale about tough surfer guys, and stuff. But we loved it. We just didn't, I surfed one time in my life, and I was like, it was exhausting. I was like, man, you know what? The girls laying on the beach drinking beers look like they're having more fun than we are out here suffering, But yeah, I guess I'm going with that. And with all the tributes yesterday, I'm not the biggest Green Day fan, but I'm a fan of the guys in that band, and I'm a fan of a few of the songs, and stuff. But I'm not a diehard. I like a little bit older stuff. But Billy Joe released on the socials. He did a cover of "I Get Around," but that he never released, and he released it yesterday just on socials, and it's so good.
I need to hear.
I mean, he's so. First off, I'm not slagging Green Day at all, but he is so damn good. He, and I love his covers band. He's always doing these, I mean, he even played with the Replacements in their last, reunion and stuff. Like, I mean, I should like them a lot more, but I just didn't gravitate toward that when they were in their heyday. I think they might still be in their heyday, but.
No, totally get it. I never was super into them either. I respect it. It's just not my bag, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Well, I know you've been in a billion bands, and I wanted to kind of just highlight some of these specific.
That is a good way to tackle it. Unless you got a 6-hour podcast.
Yeah, well, my wife would kill me, and I'm sure yours would be wondering where you are as well. But let's talk through the Vacant Andys. Bring me through the beginning of that. I know that's the precursor, obviously, to Dashboard and and Seville, and just bring me through the beginning of that and kind of how that came to, and what that was like for you guys, starting that band.
Yeah, so the Vacant Andys came through because my brother Daryl and I were band geeks. We were in all the middle school bands, all the high school bands, and I played bass, he played drums, and then there was a trombone player in our marching band who was a year older than I that played guitar also, and he didn't live that far away. His name was Steve Sheridan, and I don't remember whether we jammed first or my brother and he were both in National Honor Society. They were like all straight A students and stuff like that. And for Steve's National Honor Society, I guess whatever thing he had to do, he decided to do a talent show, to put on a talent show at the school. That was his event for National Honor Society. So I don't know, these two things coincided, but I don't remember the timeline very much. But so he was like, let's put together a band, and we should play the talent show. We're like, yeah, we should. And but like we wanted to write songs, like I wanted to write our own songs, like I loved playing, other people's songs, but I was really interested in writing my own songs and, writing lyrics and stuff like that. And, so we came up with a handful of our own songs, and then we learned some covers. We learned Descendants cover. We tried to learn a Police cover, but we could never get through it without laughing, because we couldn't sing like Sting. So, we learned a couple covers, and we played this talent show, and I think this was 86. It was 86 or 87, I think, and somewhere around there. Oh, maybe it was 87 because I think Steve graduated in 88. So I think we played in 87. We played the gym, and they had two setups flat on the basketball court and people in the, in the bleachers and stuff. But most of the bands that played sounded like Journey, or they sounded like Van Halen, because that was what was hugely popular at the time. And I remember we wore surf shorts and we looked like prep kids that surfed. And we had like Vans on, and everybody else was in, we probably had like semi-long hair, but everybody else had long hair with cut off sleeves, and a Journey shirt or whatever the popular band at the time, and ripped jeans and, handkerchief tied around your knee. But we played these songs, and we had so much fun doing it. And the next day, I remember when I went to class, I remember some of the girls going, "I didn't know you were a musician," and like I was a geek. I was a total little tiny band geek, and I was just like, "Oh, this is cool," Like I always wanted to play music, but now I was like, "Oh, the chicks dig it too? What?" Yeah. So that was rad. So we did that, and then later on that year, we played Project Graduation. When he graduated, we played with a couple other like high school bands, and there were some really good high school bands. So we did that, and then he went away to University of Miami, and the next year we were like, oh, we're gonna audition for Battle of the Bands, because it's Boca, and it's not like so we got into he was in town for one day, and we flippantly just went like, oh, they're doing auditions right now, we should go. And we did. We hadn't practiced or anything in 6 months, we just went, and they let us in. But he was getting inducted into a frat the night that the show was going to be. So we had to grab another guitar player from Peaches, because Daryl worked at Peaches. This is like 88, 89. And we grabbed another guitar player and taught him the songs. And so we played that. We came in last because they hated us because we didn't play hard rock. Like we didn't play, hair metal stuff. Yeah. And we also brought pyro, which they totally hated. So we had our own pyro. But then, already, within 1 year, the Vacant Andys had a different guitar player. And Russ, who was the second guitar player, I don't know whether he wanted to do it anymore or not anyway, but I left to go to the Army. And but right before I left to go to the Army, we had another guitar player come in, Tom Hammond, and then Brian Norton, a friend of ours from band, was singing. So we were a 4-piece, but I don't think we played. I think we just played at the house doing things at that time. I don't remember playing a show with those guys. And I know it wouldn't have been like in a bar or anything, because I didn't do that till I came back from the Army. But then I left for the Army. They got a different singer. Brian moved over to playing bass, and they really ramped it up. So my brother is the only person that's been in the Vacant Andys the whole time. And, so when you say Vacant Andys, I know, Chris and I are more well known than my brother or anybody else that was in the Vacant Andys, sure. Johnny O too. But Daryl's always been the core and the base for Vacant Andys. But when I was away in the Army, they, like Brian and Daryl and Tom, and I don't know how much Charlie had to do with the music, but they were writing these really killer songs, and it was, you know, had a little bit of Jane's in there, had a little Rush, had a, you know, it was some proggy side, but some dance side, some punk side. It was a little bit of a, you know, amalgamation of everything, but that was a lot what was happening at that time, you know?
Yeah.
There, especially after Jane's kind of, you know, after they released Nothing Shocking, and everybody was like, oh shit, it's a free-for-all. We can do funk and metal and, you know, this. So when I was away for 3 years in the Army. When I came home, Brian, who was the bass player, his parents had talked him into going back to school. So he left. So I automatically just fell into playing bass in the Vacant Andys again, and playing a lot of those old songs, which is cool, and writing a bunch of new songs. But we were really, really techie, you know, like I wanted, you know, we were all still just bringing parts together. You know, we were just like, we were Frankensteining songs together. Like, oh, I got this cool riff. Oh, I got this riff that's in the same key. Let's just put them together. But we ended up playing out, and we were good musicians. And some of those songs are really cool. But they weren't as satisfying to me. And I constantly wanted to progress into being, a little more of a songwriter. I wanted to, you know, like, I wanted it to be more, I don't know. I wanted it to be more like the bands I loved, like Husker Du and All and things like that. And some of our stuff was, but not enough of it for me. So anyway, that band ended up playing quite a few shows until the mid 90s. And then Tom decided he was leaving the band. And he wanted to concentrate on, I think he wanted to go back to school, and he went back to school, and he was always a computer programmer, and he went, and he's still to that day doing that. But we had a show in Gainesville. I believe it was called something. It was called something Fest, and began with an H, maybe Humble Fest. It might've been called. And, we had a show in a few weeks. So I'd gotten to know, I had met Chris in 92, and this is like 94, I think I'm talking, when Tom left. And I paged him, because we didn't have cell phones then. So I paged him, and he showed up at my house at the door with his date. And I was like, hey man, how would you, like, Tom just quit the band. How would you like to play, you know, guitar in the band? And he said yes, but in the same time, my brother had called John Owens, and John Owens and Chris were best friends, and John said yes. So we ended up having two guitar players come in to take Tom's place, which Tom was kind of irreplaceable. He'd been playing guitar since he was 4. He played, he didn't play with a pick. He played classically with his fingers, you know, and stuff. And he was just phenomenal. He was just a virtuoso when he was a kid. And so he was going to be hard to replace. But they came and played. Charlie was still singing at that time. Then maybe a year or two after that, Chris had been writing a bunch of songs, and he wanted to sing them. And so he and Charlie had a tiff about that. And so Chris was going to quit the band, and I told him, don't quit the band, because if you go, I'm going. Because I liked where Chris's songs were going a little bit more. But I was like, let me talk to the rest of the band and see, maybe we're just going to, you know, maybe we need to ask Charlie to leave the band or fire him, depending on how that's going to go. So I ended up firing Charlie from the band, and then that 4-piece became Daryl and I and Chris and John, which is the Vacant Andys that most people know. And the Vacant Andys that, if the Vacant Andys had a show today, that's who would be in the band. And it was great because they were younger, and they had a lot more connections with the underground music scene, a little further south, more in like Fort Lauderdale and even to Miami, whereas Daryl and I were still only kind of Deerfield to maybe Delray. And they had a more expanded knowledge of bands and venues that were kind of where we wanted to be anyway. So that was really helpful. Besides the fact that they were really creative, it worked out well. It was, Chris and I and Daryl and John. Even when we traveled in 2 vehicles, that's usually how it was, for no reason whatsoever other than our personalities maybe just kind of fell that way.
Yeah.
But it was some of the best of the times, man. And down here we were opening for either local or just like bands like Juggernaut, or one night we'd open for Jawbox, and then the next night we'd open for the Meatmen, and then it was the Specials, and then it was Voodoo Glow Skulls or Sick of It All, or it was just like it was all these bunch of different and eclectic. Nobody could really define our band, what we were, but we were good at what we did, and we had a lot of fun. A lot of people thought we didn't get along, but that's just because we took the piss out of each other nonstop, like we were brothers. I mean, 2 of us were, but I mean, I was always just a little bit older than a lot of the guys in that scene, that kind of, I mean, obviously there had been, the Miami and Fort Lauderdale scene had, definitely, existed before that. But in the wave that we were coming through, I seemed to be older than everybody that I was around. And it was when straight edge was huge.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, that late 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, straight edge was a big thing. But, in the mid 90s, late 90s, I was in my late 20s. And, and I had a different experience, so I was not the nicest person to a lot of those people. A lot of those kids, because I had a hard time relating when I got out of the Army. I had a hard time relating to people. I loved my band because they worked hard, we worked really hard at doing a great job and pleasing the venue, trying to please the fans, but just being ourselves. We were always on time. We set up quick. We broke down quick because we had a lot of respect for everybody else. Some of that existed in the scene, some of it didn't, so, it was really, really great time. And then we just kind of, we were trying to make a record with those. So prior to Chris and John joining, the Vacant Andys had made, when I was in the Army, I think they made 2 cassettes, which were really cool songs. When I got out and joined out of the Army and joined them, we made, I think, 1 cassette, and then we made a CD. And then after that CD, the CD didn't do well. So our record, the guy who had paid for the record and who we had signed a contract with, had left to California, and we couldn't get a hold of him. And then once Chris and John got in the band, and we did make with Charlie, we made 1 cassette, which is Spork, which is which has the first songs that Chris wrote on it. And that did really well, but we wanted to make more. We had better songs, we were evolving, and we couldn't find them anywhere. And so while that was taking place, while we were struggling with that, because we all lived together, while we were struggling with that, we didn't know what to do. And we knew we didn't want to have lawyers come after us because we were broke musicians, I mean, we were all working full time, but, we didn't think we could fight in court over it. So we looked for other opportunities. And, that's when Chris had gotten to know the Strong Arm guys and like a lot of the guys in that scene. So they created Further Seems Forever. I got asked to play in Fay Ray, which turned into playing in Fay Ray and Quit. And then Daryl and John started their own band called Anchorman. And, all those bands had a modicum of success. No more, obviously Further Seems Forever was the biggest one out of all of that. But we were all playing shows and we were doing our thing, and we were still really great friends, and we were waiting for the contract to die out which I don't think it was going to die out until like 2000, maybe 99 or 2000, 2001, something like that. But by the time that happened, you know, we were all in a bunch of these bands anyway. And then, you know, I ended up moving to Boston. You know, Chris had been writing all these songs.
Yeah.
I ended up in Anchorman for a little bit because the guitar player left. And then Chris had a bunch of these songs that he was writing that were not going to be Further Seems Forever songs. And he came over one day and showed them to me at the house, and I was blown away. I was just like, holy crap. And we hadn't written any music. We hadn't been together. You know, we hadn't played in a band in a couple years probably. And we were in, like, I was like, holy crap. And so I called the other guys and was like, hey, Chris just played me a bunch of these songs. I really think we need to listen to them, you know. And they were going to be Vacant Andys songs. And we could not agree to postpone an Anchorman rehearsal because it was the only time Chris could do it. We couldn't agree on that. So there was a big fight between my brother and I, which we reconciled, you know, like a couple hours later. But I realized at that moment that, like, I was chasing something that I wanted something different than maybe what my brother wanted. And so the guys in Quit was relocating to Boston. So I decided to move to Boston, you know, and those songs that Chris was playing for me ended up being Dashboard Confessional songs. But they would have sounded different, obviously, as Vacant Andys songs. I moved to Boston, and I was there for 6 months. Quit didn't really do much there. The guys were kind of caught up in their jobs. And but Chris, that's when Chris called me. And Chris called me in, like, maybe in September of 2000. And I was in Boston, and he was talking, you know, Further Seems Forever had toured. He had made this record, which, you know, he had made the Chris Carrabba, like, EP. He'd done some stuff with Fiddler where, you know, some of those songs got out where he was just playing solo. And then he had made this record, Swiss Army, and I had heard it when I was home. And I was just like, oh man, these are great. You know, like, I knew it. I knew those songs were going to be, like, I just knew it, you know. And, you know, and Chris and I, you know, we've always kind of had that kind of connection.
Yeah.
And he told me that he was going on tour, and he was asking me to come along. He had 2 months of tour booked. And right after he finished recording the Further Seems Forever record, he was going to go out on tour for Dashboard. And he goes, he just needed somebody to help him in the van, you know, ride around. Somebody, you know, we had lived together, so we knew how to get along.
Sure.
We'd been in a band together, so we knew how to quash, you know, arguments quickly. And we were great friends. And so I told the guys in Quit, I'm going to go for 30 days. I had a show in 30 days in Boston with Quit at TT the Bears that I didn't want to miss. And so Chris was like, yeah, we'll be back right in that time, you know. And so we went out on tour, man. I was just amazed at I had no idea, like, how much it had grown, because I was in Boston and I wasn't at home, you know. And, you know, Chris had told me, he was like, dude, it's the first time I ever paid my rent selling CDs, you know. And I was like, dude, that's our dream. Like, that was only our dream. We just wanted to pay our bills playing our instruments. Totally. That was it, you know. We weren't looking to buy houses or something like that. We just wanted to pay our rent. And he was doing that, which was amazing. And then when I started out on a tour, I brought my bass, I brought my trumpet, and, you know, just in case, you know, to throw a little here and there or sing with him. And I ended up doing that. And, you know, we came back to Boston. He tried to get on that show. And he said, you don't have to pay me. I just want to play when people are walking in. Wow. And TT the Bears wouldn't let him do that. Yeah. So then I got done with that show, and we went back home, and the guys in Quit were talking about moving to, like, Minnesota or moving to LA. And I was like, dude, I just moved to Boston for you guys 6 months ago, you know? So I was like, well, I'm going to go finish this tour with Chris then. He's got 30 more days. I'm just going to go finish it. And then we did that, you know, we were out on the road with, you know, with Newfound and with Midtown and River City High and The Movie Life, and, you know, just doing all these one-off shows or a little stream of runs. And they were amazing. And it was picking up. And by the end of 2000, you know, Chris had said, well, I think I'm gonna call Mike Marsh and put together, you know, ask him to play. What do you think about that? And I was like, Mike's a brilliant musician, you know?
Yeah, incredible.
So that's how that came about. And so I just never went back to Boston, much to the dismay of the guys in Quit. But I never went back. But they eventually understood. But and then Mike came into the mix, and we did that record. You know, we did that record in like January of 2001 or February, and it came out, I think maybe January. It came out right away because Vagrant was, you know, wanting to kind of catch fire.
Places, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you have a lot of say on that, or did Chris write everything on that? Or
Chris wrote everything. Yeah, Chris had written everything, and here we had, you know, some of that record. Obviously, we were doing band versions of the songs off of Swiss, and then he had some new songs on there. But no, I mean, he was on a streak. I mean, he's been on a streak for quite a while, you know, with songs and stuff. And, so I just wrote, generally it worked because, you know, Chris had these really wonderful songs, even as, you know, they weren't your typical structures, and they definitely weren't your typical tunings. But they were resonating with everybody that was hearing them. So then you'd get Marsh playing these really eclectic parts. Sometimes, you know, busy's not the word. I mean, busy sometimes, but they were really intricate parts. And then I was trying to do my best to keep those two things together. Yeah. And it worked out really well that we could all sing. So the harmonies were fun, and man, I mean, and then once that came out, you know, we did some smaller tours. I mean, our first band tour was opening for Face to Face. You know, wow. Face to Face, Snapcase, and H2O. That was
what a show.
That was our first band tour. You know, and we were playing sheds. You know, it was awesome. They took us out, and I mean, the crowd wanted to hate us, but we were selling a lot of CDs for them to hate us that much. You know, it was a lot of posturing, you know, like, could we like this band? Or, you know, like, if we like Snapcase or H2O or Face to Face, are we allowed to like this band, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, come to find out, yeah, you can like them all. So that was, you know, we did that, and then we did some smaller stuff, and then it just kind of, it started, you know, we did the first Vagrant tour, when that Vagrant tour happened, and it was just like, we're like, okay, now we can see this whirlwind, and it was amazing. It was really hard. It was hard to strap in and learn everything that you needed to learn, but that, if Chris has a superpower, it's, he won't give you an answer until he understands what it is you're asking or what it is you're saying. You know, which was great, because obviously in the music business, a lot of people are out there to kind of screw you. Or you can quickly, you know, you can give away your publishing when you didn't know what that meant, you know, and stuff like that. And Chris was really great about that. But yeah, man, the you know, the learning curve was so steep. It was so steep, you know. I mean, I used to say that we were lucky, you know, like you have to be a good band generally to make it. And then I used to say we're lucky, but I've changed that recently to, like, we were really fortunate. You know, I don't think it was luck because we were working our asses off, but we were fortunate that people loved Chris's songs. They liked our execution of it. Yeah. We were really, I mean, it was crazy because, you know, even after that, like when I would start other bands, I was like, right, it's good. We're going to be on the same trajectory, right? You know, it just doesn't happen that way. You know, like you can write great songs, and I'm sure in your area there's some really talented songwriters or bands, and they're just not going to have the fortune to show it to the rest of the world as big as you think maybe they should, you know? And,
Totally.
And that really, you know, that sucks, but that's what happens to most bands. So, but when you're in the middle of it, man, and then you're trying to start a new band, you know, it's like you're chasing it.
Yeah, dude, I can't imagine.
I've never been addicted to drugs or anything like that, but that's my drug, and I'm addicted to playing. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't play in 4 bands. I'm playing 4 bands now, man. I'm in my mid 50s. I'm like, that's, you know, that's my drug, is like, I love the live performance, and
totally.
I like, you know, if 3 people show up, I'm trying to make all 3 of them happy, you know, or at least that they had an enjoyable night. But
what was the obviously you're along for this ride. I mean, that was a special thing that was happening.
So special.
What was the viewpoint like for you, just being a part of it, you know, and from your perspective at least, and, you know, obviously being on that, you know, MTV Unplugged, it's iconic. My God, like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, just bring me through kind of what it was like from your, you know, just where you sat.
Well, you know, again, I was a little bit older than, you know, I'm 4 years older than Chris, which back then seemed a lot, a lot more years than 4. And, you know, older than Mike and older than a lot of the bands we were playing with. But I loved the camaraderie, like the band and the crew, when we ended up having some crew, whether it was Irma selling merchandise, or, you know, whoever's selling merchandise, or, you know, later on it'd be tour managers and, you know, stuff like that. Like the crew was always great, and that matters, you know. It's like you got to be family for a while. So it was great, and we were discovering things. You know, when Chris and I first set out, when I left Boston to do that first 30 days, you know, we mapped out taking the back roads of every show. We weren't taking, you know, the interstate as much as possible. We weren't taking any interstates and stuff. We wanted to see it because we never thought we'd do this again. Wow. You know, you never think you're going to make, you know, you drive to make it, but, you know, most of the time you don't make it. So we were like, well, are we ever going to drive around the country like this ever again? He and I, you know, even. And so we took all these back roads. So we got to see a lot of it and meet a lot of people. And, you know, at those times we were playing in basements. And then, you know, we were at the mercy of people offering us food and offering us a place to stay. And offering us extra gig, like, hey, I work at a record store. They'll have you play tomorrow before your show, and you're like, yeah, let's do it. You know, you got to promote it. So, you know, people are awesome. You know, music fans, you know, music audiences. I mean, more often than not, you know, and probably 99%, they want to help in whatever way they can because they like the music, and you do something for them, and you can't get back through the radio. So if you're playing a show at that kind of breaking point when you're just coming up. So as it got bigger, and then we started playing these places, and those same people started coming out, you know, you saw it, like, you know, we're still coming out. We got to meet the fans. We got to say hi. We got to, it's still, the fans mattered the most, you know, and they're the ones that, you know, allowed us to be, you know, fortunate and allowed us to keep rising. So it became great for me. I was doing the tour managing. So, you know, it wasn't that difficult, but it was a second job other than playing and, you know, being ready to play. So, when it got too big, I had to quit. Like, I was like, I can't, it's too much. It's too big. And I just, at the time I had the chance to just be in the band, and I was like, let me just be in the band, like I just want to play the music. And granted, tour managing probably pays a lot more than later on playing in a band and stuff like that. But it just got to be a little too much that we needed professional help. And I think Chris got the right people at the right time. There may have been some missteps along the way, but sure. I can't really recall them. And if there were any missteps, they might have been after I was out of the band. But we really surrounded ourselves with, it was a great record company. The bands that were on that record company were phenomenal. Booking agent, Ellis was freaking great. We were playing all these sold out shows, and then we started headlining shows and they were still selling out, and then we got to take the bands that we wanted, like I remember the first time that Ellis asked, we were doing our first headlining tour, and Ellis asked, he was like, well, give me a list of bands that you want to come out, and we were like Sensefield, Smoking Popes, we were like, rival schools. Like we were just giving all these bands that we had been listening to, and they all said yes. I mean, so much so that we had to split that tour into like 4 segments, and we toured with 2 of the bands for 2 weeks, and then it flipped, because at that time, Mike and I had already started Seville, and I had made a little bit of a power play saying, well, if you want me playing in Dashboard, Seville has to open up these shows. And so we did. So Seville, Chris wanted us on there, but his business partners probably didn't want us on all of those things. They probably only, but Chris was always a really great friend, especially to his friends that were in other bands, and always gave him a chance, Further and Rocking Horse Winter were on that tour. Yeah. We didn't know Ben Queller, but Ben Queller came out because somebody asked Chris to bring Ben out, for that. And so it was like the first of that tour was Seville, Ben Queller, Sensefield, and then Dashboard. And we just and it was just, and then I don't know whether it was the second or third portion of the show, was Smoking Popes were no longer, but their other band Duval was out with us. So it was Seville, Duval, rival schools, and Dashboard. It was awesome, and it was fun that the bands wanted to play with us, and that we got to play with, especially when we also got to play with all the Vagrant bands. I mean, we did so many shows with Hot Rod Circuit. We probably did the most shows with Hot Rod Circuit. Yeah. But, we got to play with, be it Alkaline Trio took us on tour. We played with the Get Up Kids plenty, Saves the Day. No Motive was on the first, Vagrant. Then we had Hey Mercedes and Anniversary and
crazy.
At that time, and we just got to be friends with those bands, and, whether they were taking us out or Chris was returning the favor, later on, because of his success. He could take those bands out, and he did that. He was always gracious that way. But yeah, when it was getting really big, we had to get a tour manager because I felt like I wasn't keeping up, and I also probably wanted to enjoy it a little bit more as just a musician and as a friend, and then yeah, man, when we made videos, we made videos for Screaming Infidelity, and then that taking off, and then we started to do the late night shows, and then we added Mike Stroud on guitar, who later turned in his cousin, then John Leffler took over, and then doing when MTV Unplugged came, that was just
unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. I mean, whenever that comes up, I'm like, it's, Screaming Infidelity changed my life, because once that song hit, it was just I was like, oh crap, we can do this for a while. And then, but MTV Unplugged, the amount of joy that people love to tell me about MTV Unplugged just gives me so much joy. We had such fun. It was hard work, but we had fun doing it. the MTV, producers and directors there, they were so great. And we were in a different medium, so they took really great care of us. And but it was really hard. It was a lot of pressure on Chris.
Sure.
As one of his best friends, I probably could have been more supportive rather than taking the piss out of him all the time. But as an older brother, I should have been a little bit more empathetic, maybe even sympathetic to some of the struggles and some of the hardship and some of the weight of carrying this thing, or the weight of trying to understand it so he can carry it. I should have been a little bit better at that time. Like I said, I was in my early 30s. I was probably 30, 31 when that was going on. And I had already done my hardship time. When I was in the Army, I was in the Gulf War, and I was like, when I got out and when I was in the Army and realized life was too short after Desert Storm, I was like, man, I just want to play music with my brother and my friends and stuff. And now I was getting to do that. But I wasn't associating the same kind of weight that I had gone through, which I probably could have had. I could have been a better sounding board. I think I was there for him somewhat, but I probably could have done, if I look back on it, I'm probably like, man, I could have been a lot better about talking about him, talking about it with him. But I think he handled that stuff. I think he handled it very well and gracious, and he took care of us very much. And I got to play some of the coolest places, but yeah, MTV Unplugged is one of those things that just lasts. And
it's iconic. It really is.
Yeah, for Dashboard, I think that's the number one thing people ask me about when it comes to Dashboard, because they remember that moment watching it, or they owned the DVD and they watched it all the time, or they listened to it in their car all the time. And that's just really great to know. And it's great that Dashboard's still going, I go see them all the time when they're, around. Sometimes, I usually fly out of South Florida because there's so many family and friends in South Florida that it's hard to get time with them. So I'll fly any place else to go hang out, for a day, with him and stuff like that. But I'm so proud of those moments. I do get, obviously I get to reflect on it 25 years, 24 years later and say, man, I could have been a better friend or better business partner for that. But honestly, we were making it up as we went along. We just, there's not really a course to teach you how to be in a band, and no band's path is the same. So,
you're right.
You're dependent on business people, and sometimes they take advantage of you and sometimes they don't. But yeah, it was a wonderful time, man.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. From the outside looking in, it was just flying so high, so fast. And it was like, wow, I felt like, for someone who was into, this style of music for a long time. And I had got to see Chris play with Further, and then he played at Cornerstone a couple of little,
he was so good with,
I know. I got to see him
frontman of Further.
I know, from like 20 people, watching him at this little thing at Cornerstone Festival in Illinois. It's like he was that thing I discovered, and I was like happy that people knew who he was now. It wasn't like, oh, how dare you? That's my band. Like that. It's like I wanted people to hear, hey, this is what I heard in the cornfields of Illinois one day, being like, this guy's just blowing my mind right now. So, being a part of that, that's so cool. I'm glad that you were able to be. And it's cool that you reflect on it and say, hey, I could have been better at this, or I could have been, but you're young. We're all young. We all make those mistakes.
Well, like Chris and I were just together for his birthday in April, and we were hanging out and we were talking about, a little too often, maybe I talk about the past with him because he's still in the middle of moving it forward, I'm trying to move other bands forward, but not necessarily Dashboard because I'm not in it anymore. But we were talking about like what, like how hard it was to try and to not get eaten up by the machine, and like outrun it. And I think Chris did such a great job of taking care of his business part about it, taking care of the guys and the crew, and that's for them to say. But I know from my experience, it was great, and it's not an easy thing to do. Like we worked our asses off, and he probably works harder now than we even did then. Wow. And especially because now, with touring or not selling records anymore, you do the radio show wherever you are on tour. Then you do a meet and greet before. Sometimes you do a sound check where you play a couple songs for VIPs, and then you do your show. And then maybe you have a meet and greet afterwards, It's a long day of talking and a long day of singing. And the older you get, you got to take care, totally. For that part, he's got to take care of that instrument and stuff. So he does a really great job of that. But he's always been a really, really disciplined and dedicated worker. So, and when it comes to his writing and even, his downtime at home, I mean, I love him, but like he'll be like, dude, I just came up with this part, and I'm like, man, I'm at work. It's like, dude, I wish I could sit around all day and play guitar like you do, other than when he's doing his family stuff, because he's a great family, he's a great family guy and a father. But, I'm like, dude, like, that would be so awesome, So, but that's how he's getting me back, that's the brotherly thing. We get to poke each other back and forth, and stuff. But yeah, during the time when that was really growing, even after that, after I left, when they opened for Weezer, and then, there were so many other opportunities that, that were happening. They ended up winning, they won the music video award for Screaming Infidelities. And then, then it was, I've seen them, on so many big tours, and whether it was, opening for U2 years later, for a couple weeks, but just like all of those things, and they all take a lot of hard work and a lot of planning, and they're exhausting, to say the least. I mean, if I go play in Gainesville, I'm exhausted, getting to the show and loading in and making sure it's right, because I want it to be presented the best, and that's a low production, like there's like zero production for that, So that it's really wonderful that they've been able. I mean, I know they took a little bit of a hiatus, but coming back so strong at festivals and now being able to tour, and I'm looking forward to them going out with the Goo Goo Dolls and
they're playing live, dude.
Yeah, it's just exciting, dude. It's super exciting to. Well, we might be at the St. Augustine one.
Oh yeah, let me know, dude.
Yeah. So
that'd be dope, dude.
Yeah.
Sick, dude. Well, listen, I wanted to touch on Seville. You mentioned it earlier. Okay. Let's talk about that, and then on War Generation. We'll shop.
Yeah.
Bring me through Seville. I know you kind of mentioned, playing, some of the dates, and kind of bring me through how that came together and what that was like.
Chris was on a hot streak with Dashboard, so he was, writing songs and stuff, and Mike and I weren't going to get any compositions that we were having, we were coming up with and stuff kind of into Dashboard, because we weren't necessarily writing that way anyway. So we decided to do something, off to the side. So we ended up calling when we were home, and we weren't home very often, but we were home, ended up asking John Owens, who was in the Vacant Andys and Anchorman, if he wanted to do it. So the three of us got together, and we wrote a few songs at rehearsal. It was odd because John and I were used to writing one way, and Mike was used to writing like a complete opposite way. So it was unique for both of us because we had to kind of compromise or try it different ways. And so we came up with I think 3 songs in the first time that we got together. And then Mike wanted to bring in Chris Carrabba, who had been in the agency with Mike. And so we did that. So we brought in Chris, and then we finished some songs and said, hey, let's just go record this EP. Let's put this together. And then we wrote that first EP, which was Waiting in Seville. And we're having a lot of fun doing it, a lot of fun. And it was just something a little bit different. Obviously it was different than Dashboard. And Chris thought it was great and really wanted to support us. And Chris had played in the agency for a little bit. And I think he even recorded a record with them. And I think maybe actually, I don't know what their last record is, but I know one of them that came out in the late 90s, he's on. And so he said, Seville can come out, I'll have Seville open up. And we had a lot of success with that. We did that. Then, I don't know, maybe a year into it, Mike couldn't. He said he couldn't do both because Seville was going to do some tours outside of Dashboard. So that meant, and Mike was the only one that was married out of us all.
Oh,
and so Mike was like, man, I can't do that. And so he was replaced. He actually told us that Chris King would be the drummer, and Chris King had played down here in South Florida, and he had played in AAA. He had played in Machete and a bunch of other really cool bands. And we loved, like, Chris was a great guy, but he was such a great drummer too. So Chris came into the mix. We made we did some touring with that, and then we toured with like Duval, and Ultimate Fake Book took us out. We toured with Shotzi and stuff, but it was kind of hard because I would come off the road. Like, there were some times where, like, I was coming off the road, the bus would drop me off in DC. I'd wait there for a day for the guys to come pick me up, and then we'd go off on tour. So that's exactly what that's why Mike was like, I can't do both of those things, but I was like, yeah, but I was getting, a little burnout. So we weren't getting along. Seville wasn't getting along as well as we should have been. And one day we just were like, you know what, man, like, we're not having fun right now with each other. Like, why do it? And more or less, we should have finished that tour. We were in the middle of a tour. We should have finished that tour just obligation wise, and maybe we could have worked something out. I personally was really burnt, and I also thought that I could start this again. I could start something again and just go. But as that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen all the time, and it definitely takes the right collection of people, especially as you get older. When you're kids, the band is a gang, so it's like all for one for all. When you're older, it's not, you might be for the band, but you also gotta be for your wife or kid or, partner, whatever it is. And you also, maybe you own a home and you've got rent or you've got a mortgage or you got a car payment, whatever it is. That became that. So Seville just kind of sputtered out. Chris Drucke did make another Seville record, which was more of a solo record, but he called it Seville. And Seville actually tried to get on Fest this year for a reunion. Cool. For a reunion, but I didn't really sell. Tony from Fest, he wasn't sold on the idea. Maybe we'll pick up some groundswell and somebody will want that to happen. But yeah, we've been talking at the end of last year to this year, and when I submitted us this year, and it didn't happen. But maybe a reunion for Seville could happen. I don't know who would drum for it. So that's kind of up in the air. But then, yeah, so Seville kind of fizzled out after a little too short for me because I just left Dashboard. And it fizzled out right after that. So that was a pretty depressing time for me. Yeah. leaving, but again, Chris has always been a little bit smarter about band members than I have in that manner of like, are they in it to win it, and he's always taken his time a little bit more with, selecting band members. I go with a little more feeling of just like, dude showed up, cool, let's go. Obviously for obvious reasons, he's got a big machine and I have a little machine going. So, you have to have a different dedication part for it.
Sure.
Yeah, so that happened. Right after that, though, not too long after that, I was in Legends Rodeo for a while.
Yeah, great band.
Then I played. Started. Robco called me, did the Enablers, which I'm still doing to this day. Did some touring with that. I've been in 30-something bands on and off, and made probably 25 to 30 records here and there. With different things. But you wanted to talk about War Generation.
War Generation, yeah.
So on that tour, on our first headlining tour, I told you that we had Sensefield out with us. So got to know John Bunch and the guys in Sensefield well. And we really hit it off. And then, cut to a couple years later after that, when John... maybe even a few years later. I don't remember what the date is for John. I guess it had to be 2004, 3 or 4, when he became the singer for Further.
Oh, yeah.
So when he became the third singer for Further, he was down here a lot. So he and I would go, Johnny liked to party, and so did I, And so we like to, I would get off work. I was working at a restaurant. I'd get off work, go pick him up. We go drink beers, cocktails, throw darts, tell stories, until all hours in the morning and stuff. So we had a great time together for that. For the years he was in Further and stuff, and then we just stayed in touch. He always called me Bones. I always called him Bunch. We just stay in touch, and I get these messages, Bones, what are you doing? And then he hit me up one day. This is probably 2000. I think it was 2000. I know it's 2013. So he called me in the beginning of 2013. Said, "Hey, I got this band. I made this record." It was just he and Brad Lehman that had made the record, and they used some musicians in LA. I think some of the guys from. Man, I'm not going to remember this hardcore band that played on the record, but Brad played the guitar. They just used the drummer from, what is that? If it comes to me, I'll remember. But
yeah.
So they made this really cool. They made this record, which is which is really kind of an ode to John growing up and loving hardcore. That's a lot of the lyrics are about that. So, but he sent me. He sent me the songs. He asked me, he was like, "Hey, we got to put together a band for a tour." And I thought about you. Would you want to do it? I said, "Yeah, of course." He's like, "But Brad was living in St. Pete at the time." He was like, "But Brad's got to audition you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I hadn't auditioned for a band in forever, like, all right, cool. So Brad drove over, came to my house, and we sat in the house, and he played bass on that record, and it's brilliant. Like, and the bass parts are so fun. Like, they're so fun. Obviously, he played. Brad played in Maylene and the Sons of Disaster. Is that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I had learned the songs. I was well prepared for it. And he, I think we got through maybe 2 songs, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, cool," and. But that record, it's like singing, like backups the whole time. I mean, you're playing super fast and these really killer, intricate bass parts, and you're singing like. So they put together this band, and we rehearsed in St. Pete. And at the time, it was summer of 13. My girlfriend at the time. Her visa was running up, so she was going to have to leave by the end of the year. And I had already, my sister had been trying to help me get an engagement ring because I wanted to propose to her. but the ring, my sister was living in New York, and like we couldn't find the right diamond, and blah blah blah. It was taking forever. And of course, the moment that I go to St. Pete to rehearse, like we find the diamond. So I had it like FedEx to me when I was in St. Pete, and we rehearsed there for like I think maybe a week or two. Got the songs really down, and then our first show was in Lake Worth over on this side. So when we drove over, I asked one of the guitar players, Tommy, to drive me over early because I wanted to pick up some balloons because I wanted to get home and propose to Vanessa before we went away on this tour. And so he did that for me, and he had a video. He videotaped the whole thing too.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
And then so I got engaged and then left 14 hours later, left for tour. But I wanted her to know that like I was really dedicated to her and I. So we did the tour. Unfortunately for me, I mean, I was allowed to do the tour, but I was on probation. So I was on probation in the county of Palm Beach. So I was allowed to go on tour, and I had to send every week. I had to send a probation report of where I was, and but that also meant that I wasn't allowed to drink or anything. So John was not happy about that part because he and I were used to partying together.
Sure.
But we were having a good time with these, with these shows, but we were trying to further it, right? We were trying to make it to where, we were going to get a booking agent or get a manager and stuff. And with everybody that was in the band, with everybody's connections, we should have been able to do that. But nobody had bigger connections than John. But John was really shy. He was super shy about talking business or promoting himself in that manner. Like, he was good on camera. He's good one-on-one because he's so affable, right? Like everyone loves Johnny Bunch, and but he wasn't good at promoting himself. He wasn't good about talking about the band and promoting it in that manner. And it was a little bit frustrating. It never leaked into the shows, and stuff like that. But John hadn't been on tour for a while, and he wanted to live it up, and so did I. But I just was on probation, and I was newly engaged. And it was like the last thing I wanted to do is go to jail. So yeah. So, but that didn't it didn't bother it. But it was really nice for Jumpsuit to take us out on most of that tour. Was really cool. Also because Ronnie, the singer for Jumpsuit, his first show was the Vacant Andys and Juggernaut at the Lion's Den in Orange Park.
Wow, that makes sense.
And he was like, "Yeah, I bought your guys' shirt, but it was like a double X large because that's all you had." He goes, and somebody signed it, "Hail Satan." And I was like, "Oh, John Owens, definitely. He signed that all the time like that." And he was like, "Yeah, I had a mohawk, and you guys were great and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, that's so random. That's really cool," because they're a Jacksonville band, and that was really fun. And we had hoped to do some more tours, but man, we just couldn't get any footing with it. And the record company that record came out was doing well. They had Hot Water Music and a bunch of other, and but yeah, we just couldn't get a foothold, and we did, we played our own show at St. Vitus for like a showcase, which was huge. And, but yeah, man, we just couldn't get any footing on that. And then, that just kind of fizzled out. I think John started, I think Lucky Scars was the band or the thing that he did recording wise. Lucky Scars, that was it, not Banditos, or his name for Lucky Scars. I don't know whether it's Johnny Scars or Johnny Bandito, I don't know. Or maybe maybe I'm conflating that. There might have been two bands, Los Banditos and then Lucky Scars too. He was trying to do stuff, but he was working. I think he was working at like Trader Joe's, and he was kind of depressed about all of that stuff. And then, then when he passed away, that was heartbreaking. We had just spoken a week before that, and he was talking about, hey, we're getting, Bradley's got some songs, and we're going to do some demos. And I was like, yeah, that's exciting. Hell yeah, that's going to be cool. I think that was, that was going to be a new war gen, but the last things we said to each other was, love you bunch, love you bones. And, but yeah, I miss him a lot. I miss him a lot. It was fun to get to play with him. And, Brad's just great people. He was a great band leader for that. JTL baby, the drummer. I mean, John's phenomenal drummer. He plays with like MC Lars and stuff, and he plays in Maylene also. Tommy Cooper, played in a whole bunch of bands from Pennsylvania, a whole bunch of punk bands like Dharma Punk, and those guys were just really great. And then Bailey Griff, the guy that was helping us out with it, Bailey. I mean, Bailey's been killing it since War Gen. I mean, I think he's out with Fontaines now.
Oh, wow.
But he's always teching for like these really great. Bailey loves music. He loves music so well, and he's just great at his job. And but he's been out on tour with bands forever, and he's now married and got the cutest little daughter. So yeah, those guys, it meant a lot. We definitely, Bunch was on, he was a handful on that tour, as he always was. But I think that band could have been bigger if he would have helped push it a little bit more, but that just wasn't, it just wasn't John. But I do know that the guys in Sensefield, a couple of the guys in Sensefield, are doing a new band.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And that's really rad. I'm really looking forward to that. I saw that was happening in Minnesota. And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited to hear Chris's songs and, that I think that's going to be, to me, Sensefield was, when Building came out, they were like 3 or 4 years ahead of their time. And,
totally.
Had that record come out 3 years later, or the industry had been 3 years earlier, I think they might have been one of the biggest bands ever.
Oh yeah. They were.
And it's not that, I mean, their other records after that are phenomenal too, but like Building's just that Building, I mean, created the template for so much of what came, in the next years that, I don't want to say, I mean, even, I will say though, even Vacant Andys and stuff like that, like we were like, how do you do this? So, like, we want to do something like that. And I think a lot of it, has to do with that influence. And, I think Sensefield was a great influence. I think John was a huge influence, and I miss him. He was such a fun guy to be with, had his demons, of course, and, had his flaws, but man, still miss him a lot. But yeah, I'm so happy that I got to do that, I'm fortunate, man. I'm fortunate that I got to play with him. I'm fortunate I got to play with, everybody I get to play with. It's my great fortune to get to do what I do with so many great songwriters and great people.
Well, I'm fortunate you spent some time with me on this podcast.
Man,
I'm really grateful for it.
I've been fortunate, man, to run into you, 50 to 100 times over the last, couple decades. And it's weird that it took so long for us to get this, but I really do appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Man, it's really cool to see you.
Yeah, man. I know you can't predict the future. What does the future look like for you?
Well, I'm not going to stop playing. So, we're going to, Lightworkers and Enablers are going to create new music. The Stiff are writing new songs. I don't know if the Metropolitan will ever get their shit together, or, enough to I know we have a couple songs that we need to finish in the studio, so maybe a couple songs come out from that. But I still love creating music. But the Lightworkers is going to be the big thing at Fest. I hope that we're going to have at least 4 new songs. We're trying to package everything together that we've done, all the EPs. So all together, and we're going to release it as we're trying to release it as a double vinyl for just the whole thing, which will have the 4 new songs on it. So if we can get that done, which we are hopeful to do, that would be fun. I'd love to do some more Enabler recordings, and Yeah, man. Even in Lightworkers, my brother came back. So my brother and I didn't play forever because I left to Boston. I rarely paid with my brother for anything. And our drummer for Lightworkers, Andre, who played in Fay Ray and Quit, plays in Enablers with me. Also, he's the drummer I've played with in most bands. But he couldn't do this gig, and then we wrote these songs for this gig, and then we decided to record them with my brother. So I got to record that
That's cool.
2 EPs ago, which is rad. Because my brother just moved to Michigan last year, and so who knows, if we'll ever play together. I mean, maybe the Vacant Andys will do something. So we've been throwing songs back and forth, the Vacant Andys. So
that's cool.
Yeah, Chris has got a really good song that he submitted, and so I had to go back and work on mine because I wanted to live up to it. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll get a Seville or a Vacant Andys reunion going one of these days, because I know we'd love nothing more than play together and making an event or something.
Hey, thank you, listener, for tuning in again and again. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for the likes, the subscribes, the messages, all that. I really, really appreciate it. It's been an honor to be on this ride with you guys, so thank you again for that. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook at The Rumors Are TrueCast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, you know the drill, so thank you for that. Thank you to Dan Bonebrake. Awesome conversation. So stoked to finally get to talk to you about your journey. Really appreciate your friendship over the years as well. So thank you again to Dan Bonebrake. Got some incredible artists on the horizon, guys. And you know it, nostalgia is still a heck of a drug. The podcast is produced by Wesley Hill, artwork by Jared Chase Bowser, and music by Brian Jaron. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, producer, and man of many talents, Brian Jaron.